Hi, welcome to another video of boring Eastern Roman history. We're doing this one on the Taronites family as a whole. Um, it starts off, the Taronites family started off with Prince Ashot III of the region of Tehran in southern Armenia, dies around 967, 968. Um, Gregory and his brother Bagrat ceded Tehran to the Eastern Roman Empire in exchange for extensive lands and titles of patriarchos. So this was a start to a foundation of which became the noble Taronites family, which were prominent till the 12th century. So they really lost their status probably after like 1204, after the Fourth Crusade. They were formerly known in their Greek name as Pakratios. They also had other names too that they were known by, such as Asotios and Cryokoriokios, which they took the Taronites in favor of a Roman name. So, not much is known about Bagrat, but Gregory, there's a lot more known. Um, so we talked about before in another video a little bit. We touched about Bardas Scleros rebels in 976, and at first these two brothers, Bagrat and Gregory, both support Scleros, but soon they switch back to being loyal. There was no repercussions from Basil II for this. So in 988, 989, we have the revolt now of Bardas Phocas, which I mentioned in detail in the previous video on Delphinus. So we see Gregory, now a magistros, was tasked by Basil to stop Bardas' son Nicephorus at Trebizond, who was blocking grain from coming to the capital. And we talked about how the Devet of Tau, lone soldiers, Nicephorus, that was both Georgian and Armenian, and they really were instrumental in helping defeat Gregory in this imperial army. And it was funny, Gregory had landed via ship to Trebizond to try to take care of Nicephorus, but was unsuccessful. Basil then left the Balkan army under Gregory's command and tasked him with stopping Samuel of Bulgaria from raiding. And Gregory was appointed Duke of Thessalonica. So the exact date of Gregory's death, we don't really have his birth date, but we do have roughly the date of his death. Now, there is some contradiction with this too. We have dates of 991, 995, and 996 as his death. So Armenian sources date it as him dying in 991. Skylitzes dates it as 996, and modern historians date it 995. And it makes more sense with the modern historians because you do see that in 995, John Chaldos is the new Duke of Thessalonica. So that would make sense that sometime in 995, Gregory was killed fighting the Bulgarians. Gregory was alerted of a raiding Bulgarian force, and he dispatches his son Ashot to go with a vanguard and do recon, but not engage the enemy. And of course, Ashot doesn't fucking listen, and he attacks this Bulgarian force and gets a little overzealous and gets led into an ambush and is surrounded and is captured. So this really, saddens Gregory, who then rushes forward with some of the forces and tries to free his son, but is killed fighting the Bulgarians. Now, Ashot is brought back to Samuel, and at some time being a captive there, his daughter Miroslava just falls like madly in love with this Ashot and wants to marry him, and goes as far to say that she's going to commit suicide if Samuel doesn't allow them to be married. So In 996, Samuel decides to allow them to marry and makes Ashot the governor of Dyrrhachium. So Ashot uses a magnet, John Chryselios, who agrees to open the doors secretly to a Roman force that's going to be dispatched to come in, but he wants the deal is to give him lands and titles, which is, granted. So Ashot and Miroslava leave Dyrrhachium via ship back to Constantinople, and Dyrrhachium becomes under Roman control. Now at Constantinople, Basil bestows the title of Magistros on Ashot and Zosti Petrarchia onto Miroslava. Nothing's ever further known of these two, so it's just kind of like they receive these titles and just live out their days, probably pumping out little Taronites, just having fun. We do know Gregory had one daughter, Irene, who married into an Armenian family, Taronites. And there's not a lot known about the Taronites, but there was like two prominent main generals that were produced from that family line during this century. But you'll see the Taronites do kind of hang on a little bit. I'll probably talk about them later. Going into like the 11th century. So, going a little forward in time, there's another Gregory. Surprise, surprise. Was the governor of Chaldea, and he rebelled against Alexios I in about 1103, 1104. And he governed independently until he was defeated in battle around 1106, 1107. He would be imprisoned at the place called Animos and later pardoned by Alexios. His parents are unknown, but we do know he was a nephew to the Pan-Hypersebastos Michael Taronites, who married Maria Komneni, who's the sister of Alexios I. Gregory was recorded as the Duke of Chaldia, which was attested in letters from Theophlactus of Ohrid. He had held office in the Balkans before being sent to fight the Turks near Neo Caesarea. He returned to Constantinople and was rewarded this another title. So Gregory, for some unknown reason, decides to rebel against Alexius, and like I was mentioning before, and what he did is he imprisoned the former Duke, Debentos, and other notables that were not on board with his rebellion. Now, I don't know why it wasn't documented that he seemed like he was in favor, being, part of this noble family that's married in the Komnenoi family, but for some reasons or whatever, he just decides, okay, I'm going to rebel. And Alexios is pleading multiple times for him to stop, to no avail. He's sending letters, pleading with them, then threatening letters. Nothing is swaying him to come back to the under imperial control. So Alexios dispatches an imperial army under Gregory's cousin John Taronites. And Gregory tried to reach out for support to the Dacians of Sebastia, but John was just in time to actually intercept him. He used some Frankish mercenaries who managed to actually capture Gregory, unhorsing him, and then he was carried back in chains to Constantinople. At first, Alexios, being so pissed off, was going to blind him, but John really fought for him for leniency, and Alexios granted this leniency, and basically he was just had his beard shaved off, his head, probably paraded on the back of a donkey, how they used to do in the good old days of Constantinople, and paraded around the streets of Constantinople, for a shame. Kind of like Game of Thrones. Probably they rang little bells and yelled, "Shame, shame." Look at this. This guy has no beard. What a weirdo. So, yeah. So after some time thinking about stuff in prison, he actually gets pardoned. And he apologizes. He's like a reborn Christian, or I should say, Orthodox Christian. And per Anna Komneni and her husband, Nicephorus Briones the Younger, they state he received higher honors. So he was a new man. but they really don't have anything else mentioned about him besides that little snippet. On the other hand, now the cousin John Taronites we do know he was born in 1067 and served as a Duke of Skopje in the Balkans around 1092 to 1093. And his father was the Panhyper Sebastios, Michael, as we had mentioned earlier. Now, 1061 to 1063, this John marries Maria Komneni, the oldest daughter of the Megas Domesticus John Komnenos and Anna de Lesini. Basically, Maria was the older sister of Alexios. In 1094, his father was dismissed and banished for involvement with being involved in a conspiracy with Romanus Diogenes' son Nicephorus against Alexios. Surprise, surprise, Diogenes. But, in all fairness, the Diogenes family was like a bunch of conspirators. It's really sad, too. You'll see with the Taronites, too, that's like, even though they excelled by intermarrying with these other prestigious families, especially the Komnenoi, you see a few of them rebelling, too. So it's like, I guess, a common practice with these aristocratic families. We do have him mentioned in late 1094, entrusted with defense of Barrow against the Cumans. And again in 1094, 1095, he participated in a synod at the Balarchini Palace, where Leo of Chalcedon was condemned. And he was listed as one of the attendees as the rank of a Sebastos. So he got that rank sometime, in the early 90s. 1102, he serves as a position of a civil governor for Thrace, Macedonia, Bolera, and Thessalonica. In 1104, this is where we had him squashes his cousin's Gregory's revolt, as we explained earlier. After 1104, nothing further is known of him. We do know from seals and documents that he held the ranks of Pansebasios, Sebasios, Dicolytes, and an eparch. I'm not sure what city that he was the eparch of, but nonetheless he was. Let's see. Around 1147 to about 1204, this is when you start to see the Taronites family fade away from importance and influence in civil or military factions. It just shows another family, as I mentioned earlier, that got faded away in like in other videos. Another family that faded away during Manuel's reign. So I guess he just got tired of some of these old noble aristocratic families and just cashiered them out slowly, weeded them out from high office, where usually people were favored and excelled, as we see under the other Komnenoi family. I did find my notes because I'm so prepared. He was the eparch, so he got appointed by Alexios around 1107 as the eparch of Constantinople. So he was in charge of maintaining public order and safety within Constantinople. Anna Komneni reveals in her description of him as like a perfectly Romanized gentleman. From his early childhood, John had been under the emperor's protection and for a long time served him as a secretary. He was a man of active mind with a good knowledge of Roman law. If he spoke freely, his censors were not devoid of tact. He was Aristotle's ideal of what a dialectician should be. Anthony Caldelis explains that the Taronites were a benchmark of Romanus, and no mention is made anywhere in the poem of a foreign origin for them. He is talking about a mid-12th century poem about a Tarentissa bride to a scion of the ruling Komnenos dynasty. It states in the poem, the bride is not of foreign origin and comes from a noble family being the glory of the Taronites. So even though they were foreign, like Armenian, they were just so Romanized. Just became this great, what a great noble family should be. Um, the Taronites rose, like I said before, the highest levels of Roman aristocracy in the 11th and 12th centuries. Um, they certainly were Byzantine Orthodox and dropped their native names that we mentioned before. Um, there is one Taronites that was listed among Roman casualties in a battle with the Turks in the 1070s, which was pretty interesting to see that. Um, in the 11th century, a surviving letter from Theophylactus of Orad, which you see in a lot of my videos, is Theophylactus was really instrumental in the 11th century. A lot of his letters survive, which is awesome. So he writes a letter to Gregory Taronites, praising his accomplishments as an administrator and a governor who defeated the Franks and the Turks. Now he says with flourish, it will be seen that those celebrated trophies of the ancient Romans were no myth, as we have among us uh, precisely such a most noble Roman, that ancient Roman spirit is not dead, but lives on in you. I mean, perfect flattery. I mean, who else? I like this Theophylactus Ori, man. He's great. Mr. I give out salted fishes to everybody. So, if you guys have any comments or anything I left out about this family, please make me aware of it. Appreciate your time. Thank you.